Stu here with Raid Shadow Legends to talk about major balancing in this game and what they could do to make it better. Now, I don't have any official information. I'm just going over because I did a stream this morning and somebody kind of put me back on my heels by what they said about a big major balance coming in September. They're going to wait to summon. They're going to wait to do a lot of things in the game because they think it's going to just overall change the game and make it to where they want to play champions that they currently aren't playing. And I was like, well, you know, what do you think is going to happen? Like, what can we do in this game to make it better for free-to-play, low spenders, to make the champions better overall that would make it to where we're just, like, blown away by it? And I asked, and they said they really don't know, but they're hoping something will happen. And it's kind of like reality versus expectation, right? What has proven, like, what has this company proven to us that they've done over the last year and a half for this game? Because it was in beta. It's really been out for, like, 2 years. But what have they done over the last year and a half, even with balancing? Because balancing has been far and few in between. And when we get it, it's usually like seven champions. We'll just do an average of 7 champions. And a lot of time, those champions that they do, they have to go back to the drawing board with 3 times with Mountain King, a couple times with Vergus. And I don't mind that. There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to stay on top of it. And they haven't been staying on top of that. But don't worry, we're not going to talk about balancing. We're going to talk about things that will get into the game, right? What can we do with buffs and debuffs? What can we do with the interaction on how buffs work overall? Speed buffs go off your overall speed. Well, in a lot of other games, they go off of your base speed, so you don't get crazy with overall speed. First off, do you think they're going to do something like that? Let us know in the comments below. By the end of this video, what do you think is going to happen? If you're going to say they're just going to buff like 10 guys and that's it, I'm with you. They're just going to buff like 10 champions, and that's going to be the end of it. It's going to be like Vergus here. They buffed him 2 other times. They finally got him right, and that's good. And that's a start. We need balancing every month. And people are going to cry at me right now and say, Stu, if you balance too much, nobody's going to want to play the game. And you are wrong. Games balance all the time. And if you make rares and uncommons viable in the game, people will still spend. Monetization will still happen. And we're going to talk about that's a big thing for me. I think that would be the biggest revision in this game that would make it to where this game gets brought up to like other games are. There's only one other game I've played in all the time of me playing app gacha games that has a different lower and higher version of buffs and debuffs, and that game failed. It was called Lionheart Dark Moon. It was still a decent game, but it failed miserably. It had a whole bunch of different ones. Even some legendaries had some outlandish versions of other things, and it just didn't work out well. It doesn't work out well at all, and you're going to say, and I've had this before, I've said this over the last few years, even when I first started playing this game, about getting rid of the lower versions of buffs and debuffs and making this game better. And people said, well, then if I can do it with rares, then I'm not going to spend money. You can do it with rares right now, and you're still spending money. There are a few viable rares out there that we use. Yes, there's been more now that we've had the last battle pass, but there are ones out there that we use that we know that are 100% great to use in this game, and people use them, right? We've got a rare here that can do an AoE decrease defense of 60%. We need to bring this in line in the game. We really, really need to do that. So this just goes off of just ideas that I've talked about that I'm hoping maybe they'll make some overall big changes for September, and it's not just going to be a few balance changes. What would happen here is that there are a lot of champions in the game, especially rares and epics, and there are even some legendaries in the game that have the weaker versions, right? Older legendaries, and we know one day this will be revised to the higher weaken. There's no reason why he looks like Vergus, right? Why Ithos, a Void Legendary, should ever have a lower version. Pretty much nobody should have a lower version. Because once you get rid of that, you make a lot of champions viable. The saddest thing, though, is that this company has already stated that they only want uncommons and rares to get you to a certain part in this game. To a certain point in this game, and then you have to rely on epics and legendaries, which is very, very sad. Because I'm telling you, there's only one other game I've played that's done that, and all the other turn-based gacha games do not have a lower and a higher version of buffs and debuffs. They have one and one only. And it would still, again, people have said to me, well, then why would I want to play a legendary? Look, you already want to play a legendary. Legendaries multipliers are usually like a one higher or something. They always have better overall moves. It doesn't matter about the buffs and debuffs with them because they have them, but they also have other cool moves that are involved with it. So that doesn't matter. You're always going to want these Legos. People are always going to spend on the game. It's still going to make just as much money and probably more because we'll stop losing people. Because then the game will be brought up to today's standards to just like all the other games are done. exactly like all the other games are done. So if you haven't played any other gacha games out there, or if you've only played one and you haven't played the 50 or 100 plus that I have, please believe me, it makes a big difference, because we've got all these guys down here who do these lower versions of regen, lower version of weaken, of decreased defense. And not only that, it's fine that they have that, because a lot of times they don't even have a 100% chance to apply it. So it's not going to be a real viable champion for us to play with anyways, because we can't really count on, maybe I'm going to get this debuff up on a 4-turn cooldown. Over here, like, we have our Skinwalker new addition to the game, which is actually a great addition to the game, because we don't have that many champions that do really good abilities like this. Now we've got one in Magic that does an AoE decreased defense of 60%, but it's on a 75% chance to apply it. Yes, we can do Sniper to get another 5% chance to bring that to 80, but it's still a good alternative. I will say that this is actually a well-built champion, and we can use this to progress in the game. But if you wanted to do speed runs of Spider with this person as your decreased defense, you couldn't do it. You couldn't bring in your Royal Guards, your Cold Hearts, and rely on this guy every time to apply that decreased defense, because we can always be resisted at like a 2% chance, whatever it is, very low, no matter what our accuracy is to their defense. So you're always going to fail on Spiders sometimes anyways, but now you're going to have to 80%, 20% of the time, you're not even going to apply a decreased defense, and then you have to rely on the rest. Now, I'm just nitpicking at him, but this is still a well-built champion. I have nothing wrong with that rare. But when we do that, when we make those changes for rares, uncommons, epics, and those legendaries that still have the lower versions, we change the game up. We change it in a major way that it brings it to like other games. I'm telling you guys, just like all other games out there, and it'll make the game better. It really will change the game and bring out those champions that we don't get to play as much, or at least play around with them. And then if there is somebody that's crazy overpowered like Seducer, which he wouldn't be, he would just be even cooler, right? Seducer would just be even cooler, then we could always go back and balance them, right? It's always about balancing. We got to keep at it. Every month, balance 10 champions. We're not going to run out of champions to balance. We will never have that problem. Even if we balance 10 champions every month, we've got so many new ones come in, new content comes out, we need to keep balancing. So balancing that many every month isn't a big deal, because we have so many champions. We can just keep going and going and going. And a lot of times they're lazy to do it because they want to save all the cool new balancing for their new champions that come out. And that's why getting rid of the lower versions of the buff and debuffs and bringing this game up to like all other games are makes sense. Then you don't even have to balance as much. That one small change will revise a lot of issues in this game. Now, if they want to take it a step further and they're going to do some weird change on how they interact with buffs and debuffs for actual percentage-wise, or how, like I said a minute ago, speed buffs affect 30% additional speed off of your overall speed. In a lot of other games, they do it off of your base speed. Just like our auras go off of our base speed, they do a speed buff off of our base speed so it doesn't get too crazy. It does make it harder to line up your champions as far as who goes next and whatnot, because you're going off their base speed for a buff, and then when you put them in a line, you have to have different speeds. But regardless, it just makes it so that a 30% increase in speed off of somebody who's already super fast is insane. It's really crazy. And then I don't expect them to do that. I don't think the game needs to go that far, but that's what it would take, right? It would take something major to be a huge balance patch, because of what somebody told me, right? Because they said that they're waiting on this huge balance patch. So let me know your thoughts below. Like, what would it take if we removed the lower versions of the buffs and debuffs? If we did balancing every month with like 10 champions, just balance some champions, make them a little bit different. You don't even have to make them different, just up their percentage to apply. And then now with the changed, making sure they always have the higher versions of the buff and debuff, it should be fine. Because rares can have a single target, decreased defense on a 2-turn cooldown at 100% chance to apply. We're talking single target. They can even have a lot of abilities that epics and legendaries have, because they're not going to have all that other fancy stuff with it. But it will make it so that they're viable somewhere in the game, that we can use them and have a good time with them. And believe me, people are still going to spend no matter what. It's not going to affect the bottom line. It's just going to make this game like all other games are. Other than that, I can't think of any ideas over what a huge balance patch would do. You know, they could do changes to the top people out there. They could bring Rhodos in line. They could do a little bit with Siphi, maybe make her a 1-turn longer cooldown on her buffs or something like that, right? They could do something like that, but even still, that's not going to be enough to say, okay, now I'm going to play all these champions that aren't used. I will admit that back in the day, before we had Tormund, before we had Rhodos, that there were tons more variety of champions used in the game. There really were. In Arena, there were just way more. You would see all sorts of different comps out there. Since they've been introduced, we don't see that anymore. It's been very limited. We need multi-hit for Rotos no matter what. We need things to kill it and keep it dead. So we are super limited on things that we bring in there now. But I just don't know how they would change that. I don't know what a big overall balance patch would be. I would love for them to come out and tell us, though. I would love for them to give us an idea of what they're expecting to do instead of just saying, hey, guys, we've got this planned for September or whenever it's supposed to be, because that doesn't really do anything for us. All we're thinking is, hey, you're going to have 7 balanced champions coming out like you normally do. That's all I got. Please let me know your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching me and listening to me ramble on. I appreciate the love and support. I will see you guys all on a video soon.